The call for help came on a quiet Tuesday morning, the kind of morning when everyone believed the day would pass without anything unusual. The operations room at the Central Response Center was calm, filled only with the sound of soft typing, the hum of computers, and the occasional ringing of routine calls. Then, without warning, one single message broke through every channel at once. It wasn't loud, but it carried a weight that made every person in the room pause. Emergency request. Immediate assistance required. Research Station 9 critical situation. The words repeated again and again, steady and urgent. The voice on the message trembled slightly, as if the person sending it was trying hard to stay calm. People gathered around screens, brows furrowed, coffee mugs forgotten on desks. The station from which the message came was located deep in the Pacific Northwest, far from towns, cities, or even small villages. It was surrounded by tall forests, mountains hidden by fog, and long, unmarked roads that most people never traveled. A peaceful place, at least on the surface. The supervisor on duty, a man named Carter, listened closely. He replayed the message twice. Then a third time. Something felt off. The message was short, almost too short, as if the speaker didn't have the chance or permission to say more. The tone wasn't one of panic. It was quieter, almost controlled, like someone trying to alert others without drawing attention to themselves. Carter signaled the room to prepare a response. Screens lit up with maps of the region. Information about the research station filled the display, staff lists, project descriptions, emergency procedures. Yet even with all that data, nothing explained why a place that usually spent its days studying weather patterns and environmental changes would send a message marked critical. They tried calling back. No answer. They attempted a second time. Silence again. A third attempt. More silence. Now the room began to feel tense. People exchanged looks, confused, unsure, and slightly uneasy. Research Station 9 wasn't known for mistakes. The staff there was careful, disciplined, and highly trained. For them to send a distress signal and then go completely silent was unusual enough to make everyone in the central office alert. A small response team was prepared, standard procedure for remote station issues. A helicopter crew, a small medical unit, and a few field officers were placed on standby. By the time they were ready, the silence from the station felt heavier. Something about the situation made Carter pause before giving the approval to send the team out. Before he could decide, another message came through, but this time it wasn't from the research station. It was from someone far higher in the chain of command. Hold your deployment. Do not send the standard team. This situation requires special evaluation. The message was firm, not panicked, not anxious, and that firmness carried its own worry. When higher command became involved in such a direct and immediate way, it meant the issue was bigger than what most people knew. A few officers in the room exchanged surprised glances. This level of attention didn't happen often. A conference call was set up within minutes. Senior officials joined, their faces appearing on screens one by one. Some looked tired, others looked troubled, as if they had known something like this could happen sooner or later. Carter explained everything: the message, the silence, the failed attempts to reach the station, and the unusual quiet that followed. After a moment of thinking, one of the senior officials spoke. This isn't a typical emergency. You all need to understand that. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The weight behind his words was enough to silence the room. Another official added, "We have protocols for these kinds of situations, even though they are rarely used. Some programs were designed for events we hoped would never occur. Unfortunately, this appears to be one of those moments." People in the operations room sat straighter, waiting for an explanation, but none came immediately. Instead, the officials exchanged careful look, silent communication that suggested they knew far more than they were saying. Finally, one of them exhaled slowly. "We may need to activate the Vanguard list." A hush fell over the room, but not because everyone knew what that meant. In fact, most of them didn't. Only a few recognized the name, and those who did reacted instantly, their eyes widening. Carter looked startled. The Vanguard list wasn't discussed in normal meetings. It wasn't mentioned in official training. It was a quiet secret whispered by people who had worked in the agency long enough to pick up hints of the past. One officer in the back, an older man who had served for decades, whispered under his breath, "They want to send them." After all these years, Carter didn't respond. He didn't need to. Everyone was thinking the same thing. The Vanguard list wasn't a list of weapons or devices. It wasn't a set of instructions or emergency guidelines. It was a list of people, very unusual people. Individuals who had once been part of a highly specialized unit created for situations that normal teams couldn't handle, situations that needed people who thought differently, acted differently, and solved problems in ways no one else could. They were called the most dangerous humans alive, not because they caused harm, but because their abilities, intelligence, and unpredictability made them nearly impossible to replace or control. They had saved lives, solved impossible missions, and stopped disasters that never made it into public news. And then, after one final mission many years ago, the unit was quietly dissolved. Some people said it was because they were too unpredictable. Others said they chose to walk away, but whatever the truth was, no one had seen them together since Dot until now. Carter hesitated. "Are you sure we need them?" The official nodded slowly. "Yes, they are the only ones who can handle something like this. The research station was working on a project we kept classified to avoid public misunderstanding. Something may have gone wrong. We don't fully understand the situation ourselves. What we do know is that the station asked for help, and whatever happened afterward prevented them from saying more." Another official added, "We can't send regular teams into a situation we don't understand. It wouldn't be safe for them, and it wouldn't help the people at the station. The Vanguard team has experience in handling complex, unpredictable environments." Carter knew the officials were right, but he also understood the risk. Calling the Vanguard team meant letting go of the simple, predictable solutions. It meant trusting individuals who followed their own rules, who could solve problems in ways that defied standard training in the operations room. Officers whispered among themselves. Some were curious, some nervous, others simply confused. Few had heard of the Vanguard team, and fewer believed they actually existed. To them, it sounded like a legenda story told by older agents who wanted to sound impressive. A group of extraordinary people once brought together for extraordinary missions. People who didn't fit into normal categories, who could think in ways other teams couldn't. Single quotes. T. Carter finally nodded. "All right, send the call." The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Messages were prepared, encrypted, and sent out to locations only a handful of individuals in the world knew about. The call for help that had started with one quiet research station was now reaching people who lived miles away, hidden in different parts of the world, people who had once worked together as a team, but had since gone their separate ways. As the messages were sent, the operations room returned to its quiet atmosphere, but the silence was different now. It was full of anticipation, curiosity, and a sense that something rare was happening, something that didn't happen unless the situation was truly serious somewhere out there. The message was reaching people who had tried to build normal lives but who still carried the weight of their past roles. People who had promised themselves they would never return. People who thought they had left that world behind. And yet, when the message reached each of them, they paused, they listened, and slowly, each one realized. The messages went out quietly, almost like whispers moving across the world. Each of the individuals on the Vanguard list received the call in different ways, some through encrypted devices, others through old contacts who knew exactly how to reach them. The common thread was that every person recognized the significance immediately. No one doubted that this was serious. No one questioned why they were needed again. They simply understood. The first to respond was Alina. She lived in a small coastal town, far from anything that resembled the agency or its operations. Her life had slowed down over the years. She spent her days painting, tending to a garden, and occasionally teaching local students basic science. The call reached her in the morning while she was preparing tea. She froze for a moment, staring at the device that had suddenly lit up with an encrypted message. She didn't need to read the whole message. The sender's code and the urgency were enough. Alina knew that if she answered, she would be leaving behind the quiet life she had worked so hard to build. But the choice was never really a choice at all. She packed only what she needed: documents, a small bag, and a notebook filled with observations from missions past. Each item had a purpose, and each item reminded her of the skills that had once made her feared and respected. Within hours, she was on her way, moving carefully so no one would notice her departure. Across the country, another member of the Vanguard team, Marcus, received his call while teaching a seminar on logistics and problem-solving to young professionals. He had left the agency after one mission that had tested him in ways he'd never imagined. Since then, he had dedicated his life to teaching, hoping to share his knowledge in safer, more structured ways. The message made him pause. His students noticed the change in his demeanor. Marcus excused himself, closing the door behind him, and studied the message carefully. It was brief, but precise. Research, Station 9. Immediate action. Vanguard activation. Marcus didn't hesitate. He packed his essentials, including old tools and documents that had been stored securely for emergencies, and left without looking back. There was a weight in the air, a sense of urgency he couldn't explain but fully understood. As he traveled toward the central rendezvous point, memories of past missions resurfaced. He remembered the camaraderie, the tension, the sense that they were doing work no one else could do. This mission promised to be no different. Meanwhile, in a quiet apartment in a city that never slept, Aisha read her message and felt a ripple of anticipation. She had once been the strategist of the team, known for her ability to foresee potential outcomes and plan several moves ahead. In her current life, she had tried to find normalcy, balancing freelance work with personal projects, but as soon as the message appeared on her screen, she knew she could not ignore it. Something was at stake that only she and her former teammates could handle. Within the hour, she was on her way, her mind already analyzing every possible scenario that might await her. Not everyone received the message calmly. Julian, a former field operative, felt a pang of doubt. He had long since retired to a secluded area, living quietly among the mountains. He valued solitude and the distance he had created between himself and the world he had left behind. The message unsettled him at first. He knew it would mean returning to a world of unpredictability, risk, and challenges unlike anything ordinary people faced. But the thought of leaving the station unattended, of letting ordinary teams walk into danger without the right expertise, was unbearable. He packed methodically, carefully, ensuring that every item served a purpose, and set out to join the others as the members of the vanguard team made their way toward the central rendezvous point. The coordination was precise despite their long separation. Each one traveled alone, relying on instincts honed over years of specialized training. They moved efficiently, quietly, and without drawing attention. By the time the sun was high in the sky, the first members had arrived at a discreet location chosen for its privacy and accessibility. The rendezvous point was an abandoned facility, once used for training and planning missions. Its walls were weathered, the paint peeling, but it offered everything they needed: space, communication equipment, and the ability to regroup without interference. One by one, the team members arrived, exchanging brief but meaningful greetings. There was no time for casual chatter. They didn't need it. Their shared history spoke volumes. Each person understood the capabilities, strengths, and quirks of the others. When they were finally assembled, the atmosphere was tense but focused. They moved like a machine that had once been perfectly calibrated. Elena checked the maps and terrain information on her tablet, while Marcus reviewed equipment lists, noting what might be needed and what could be left behind. Aisha ran through possible scenarios, predicting obstacles and outcomes, quietly sharing her insights with the group. Julian did a perimeter check, making sure their location was secure and that no one had followed them. Every action was precise, deliberate, and purposeful. Despite the seriousness, there were moments that revealed their humanity. Aisha laughed softly at a familiar joke Julian made. Marcus shook his head at Elena's meticulous notes, and Elena raised an eyebrow at Marcus's over-preparedness. These small interactions reminded the man and anyone observing that they were not just operatives or specialists. They were people capable of warmth, humor, and trust, even after years apart. After a quick briefing, the team reviewed the limited information they had received about the research station. The project was described only vaguely, emphasizing its sensitivity and the need for caution. They knew it involved environmental and technological research, and they knew something had gone wrong. Beyond that, details were scarce. This lack of information did not unsettle them. It was expected. Their training had taught them to adapt to the unknown, to remain calm and resourceful when facts were incomplete. As the team planned their journey to the station, they coordinated transportation, supplies, and contingency plans. They debated routes, predicting which paths would be safest and quickest. They considered environmental conditions, local terrain, and potential obstacles. Elena suggested using aerial surveillance to assess the area before entering, while Marcus ensured that communication lines were secure and functional. Aisha focused on potential decision points, anticipating how the situation could unfold and what responses might be necessary. Julian, ever cautious, reminded the group to prepare for unexpected variables. By the late afternoon, everything was ready. They moved out together, a cohesive unit despite the years of separation. Their journey toward Research Station 9 was not just physical, it was mental. Each member understood that this mission would challenge their skills, test their judgment, and demand every ounce of experience they had gained over the years. And yet, there was a sense of purpose that went beyond duty. It was the understanding that they were uniquely suited to this task, and that their presence could make the difference between success and failure. As night fell, the forest surrounding the station grew dense and quiet. The team traveled carefully, using night vision devices and silent communication techniques. The shadows and sounds of the forest reminded them that the station's location was isolated and that whatever had caused the distress signal was contained within a difficult-to-access area. Their focus sharpened with every step. During brief pauses, they shared stories of their years apart, not about missions, but about small victories in personal lives, moments that reminded them they were still human. These exchanges strengthened their bond, preparing them to face whatever awaited them at the station. They reminded each other that, while they were extraordinary in skill and resourcefulness, they were still people who relied on trust, teamwork, and understanding. Finally, after hours of careful movement, the team reached a point near the station. From there, they could see the faint lights of the research facility in the distance, dim and irregular, as if something had disturbed the normal rhythm of operations. They stopped, taking in the scene silently. The quiet was heavy, filled with anticipation. Each member of the team felt the weight of the unknown, but none faltered. They had been called for this reason, and they were ready. Elena adjusted her equipment, Marcus double-checked communications, Aisha reviewed the plan one final time, and Julian scanned the perimeter for potential risks. Together, they prepared to enter the station, each step measured, precise, and deliberate. They were not just responding to a call for help, they were stepping into a situation that only they could handle, guided by experience, skill, and an unspoken understanding that the mission mattered more than anything else. The team was ready. The night awaited them, and beyond it, the unknown. The team approached the research station quietly, moving through the dense forest with practiced steps. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl, the snap of a branch underfoot was noted and assessed. They had been trained to notice what most people would overlook. The forest seemed peaceful, but the team knew that appearances could be deceptive. The distress signal had been real, and the silence from the station suggested that something serious had occurred as they reached the edge of a clearing. The research station came into view. It was a modern building, mostly glass and steel, designed to blend into the surrounding trees. But tonight, its lights flickered unevenly, and the main doors were slightly ajar. It was subtle, almost invisible to anyone not trained to notice such details. But for the team, it was a warning. Something had happened inside. Alina took the lead, her eyes scanning the area for clues. She noticed small signs that indicated movement footprints, disturbed vegetation, and faint marks on the snow-dusted ground. "They've been here recently," she whispered. "Someone or something has moved through." Marcus checked their surroundings with a thermal scanner, sweeping the building for heat sources. The screen showed only a few isolated points of warmth, suggesting that most of the staff had either evacuated or were hiding. He frowned. "Very few people left," he said, "and I don't see anyone outside. Whoever's here, they're inside the building." Aisha studied the patterns, noting how the heat signatures aligned with the rooms and corridors of the station. She spoke slowly, carefully. "The areas with activity are clustered in 2 locations. That could mean survivors are gathered there or that something is blocking access to other sections." She paused, then added, "We need to be ready for either scenario." Julian moved around the perimeter, checking entry points and making mental notes of potential hazards. His experience with containment operations made him aware of things that might escape notice. "We need to go in systematically," he said. "We can't rush. We don't know what's waiting inside." The team gathered at the main entrance, exchanging a brief nod. Without words, they understood each other perfectly. This was what made them different from ordinary teams. They didn't need instructions. They anticipated, adapted, and acted as one unit. They entered the building carefully, Alina leading with a small flashlight and a tablet displaying maps and buildings. The hallways were dark, the silence thick. The usual hum of equipment was absent, replaced by a subtle tension that made every footstep feel louder than normal. The walls were lined with research stations, storage areas, and small living quarters. Signs of disruption were everywhere: papers scattered, chairs slightly moved, and equipment left on as if someone had left in a hurry. Marcus checked the security feed stored locally. Most cameras were offline, either disabled or damaged. "Someone wanted to prevent us from seeing what's happening," he said. "We'll need to rely on observation and intuition." They moved deeper into the building, each room telling a story. Some showed signs of normal work: interrupted data left open on screens, notebooks lying on desks, cups of coffee abandoned. Others were more puzzling: areas with instruments overturned, chemicals left in unstable positions, and objects out of place. The team began to realize that this was not just a simple incident. Something unpredictable had caused the chaos on the main laboratory. They found the first human survivor, a young scientist who looked exhausted but unharmed. She froze when she saw the team, unsure whether to trust them. Alina knelt beside her, speaking softly. "We're here to help. You're safe now." The scientist exhaled and nodded, relief flooding her face. The scientist explained that the experiment had involved testing new cognitive and sensory enhancements, designed to help humans respond faster to environmental changes. It was intended to be a controlled study, but an unexpected reaction had caused the subjects to behave unpredictably. While no one was physically harmed, the situation had quickly spiraled beyond the station's capacity to manage. Aisha listened intently, taking notes and asking questions. "Were any protocols breached?" she asked. The scientist shook her head. "No, all protocols were followed, but the reaction was not something anyone expected. We tried to contain it, but it moved faster than we could adapt. That's why we sent the distress signal." Julian checked the surrounding areas while Alina stayed with the scientist, ensuring her safety and keeping her calm. Marcus began examining the lab equipment, identifying what could help them manage the situation. The team worked quickly but methodically, each member performing the tasks that matched their expertise. As they explored further, the team noticed signs that suggested some of the enhanced subjects were still active, moving quietly through the building. There were indications of activity: footprints, displaced objects, and faint sounds in distant rooms. While no immediate threat was visible, the team knew they had to proceed with caution. Alina suggested they split into smaller units to cover more ground, but in a coordinated way. Marcus would take the west wing, Julian the north and storage areas, while Alina and Aisha stayed with the scientist in the central lab to monitor the situation. Each subgroup had clear communication protocols and backup plans in case of emergencies. The team moved with precision, their actions a blend of experience and instinct. Marcus entered the west wing first, noting the instruments and equipment that had been affected. He marked areas that required attention and identified paths that would allow them to navigate safely. Meanwhile, Julian explored the storage areas, checking for any hidden dangers and verifying that containment measures were intact. Alina and Aisha remained in the lab, keeping the scientist calm and gathering as much information as possible. They discussed potential strategies, considering every possible outcome and preparing for unforeseen developments. Their planning was meticulous, yet flexible, ready to adapt to whatever might occur next. As they continued, subtle changes in the environment drew their attention. Small noises echoed in distant corridors, lights flickered sporadically, and objects shifted slightly as if moved by unseen hands. The team noted these occurrences but remained composed. They were trained to observe, analyze, and respond with careful precision, not panic. At one point, Marcus discovered a room that had been partially sealed from the inside. Inside, he found equipment designed for advanced sensory testing, with interfaces that seemed far more sophisticated than the rest of the lab. The room was empty, but it was clear that it had been in use recently. Marcus communicated the discovery to the team, and Alina suggested that they approach cautiously, considering that this room could hold important information about the experiment's progress. Julian, moving through the storage area, found signs that some of the subjects had attempted to interact with the environment, testing boundaries and observing patterns. "They're learning," he said quietly into his communicator. "We need to anticipate their next steps." Aisha analyzed the data they had gathered so far and began predicting potential movement patterns of the subjects. She suggested positioning themselves strategically to monitor and guide the situation, minimizing disruption and ensuring safety. Her predictions proved accurate, allowing the team to move efficiently without alarming the subjects further. Hours passed as they worked through the station. Each room revealed more clues about what had occurred: data logs, notes, and observations left behind by the researchers. The team pieced together the sequence of events, forming a clear picture of how the situation had developed. They realized that the initial reaction had been unexpected but manageable, and that the enhanced subjects were not dangerous in the conventional sense. They were simply operating at levels beyond normal comprehension, testing limits, and learning quickly. By the time they reached the central control room, the team had gathered enough information to understand the situation. They knew which areas were safe, which required monitoring, and which subjects needed guidance. The chaos that had first greeted them was now being organized, managed, and controlled by their careful planning and coordination. Alina, Marcus, Aisha, and Julian regrouped, sharing their findings and refining their approach. They coordinated their next steps, ensuring that every action was deliberate, precise, and measured. They were not simply reacting, they were shaping the situation, guiding it towards stability. As dawn approached, the first light of morning filtered through the windows, casting a soft glow over the station. The forest outside remained silent, but inside, the team had brought order from uncertainty. The scientist, once anxious and overwhelmed, now watched with relief as the team managed the environment and ensured the safety of all subjects involved. The mission had not yet ended, but the first stage was complete. The team had established control, understood the dynamics of the situation, and prepared for the next steps. Their expertise, experience, and coordination had turned a potentially overwhelming challenge into a manageable operation. Despite the long night and the unknowns still ahead, there was a sense of accomplishment. They had arrived, assessed the situation, and begun guiding it toward resolution. And as they prepared for the next phase, they knew one thing clearly: together, they could face whatever challenges remained. The morning light slowly filled the research station, highlighting the disarray from the previous night. Yet, for the vanguard team, the chaos no longer seemed overwhelming. Each member had a clear understanding of the situation, and they moved with calm confidence. Their mission was no longer just about discovering what had happened. It was about carefully managing what remained, ensuring that both the station and its enhanced subjects were guided safely and efficiently. Alina and Aisha stayed in the central lab, working with the scientists to analyze the data left behind. The information showed that the enhanced subjects were capable of learning and adapting at a remarkable speed. They were curious, observant, and highly intelligent, but their actions could be unpredictable. Alina realized that if handled correctly, these subjects could be guided rather than controlled, allowing the situation to stabilize without unnecessary disruption. Meanwhile, Marcus and Julian moved through the wings of the station, coordinating containment strategies. They were not dealing with dangerous creatures or hostile forces, but with individuals whose abilities far exceeded the normal limits. The challenge was to anticipate movements, understand behavior patterns, and maintain order without alarming the subjects. Every decision mattered, and every step had to be calculated. Marcus paused at a junction in the west wing, reviewing a set of observations he had gathered overnight. "The subjects are curious," he said quietly into his communicator. "They seem to be testing the boundaries of their environment. We need to give them direction without restricting their learning." Julian nodded from the north wing. "Agreed. We can set up guided paths using environmental cues. They respond well to patterns, and if we create predictable patterns, we can lead them without causing stress." Alina listened carefully and suggested that they combine their knowledge. "We can use both observation and guidance," she said. "We don't need to control them strictly. If we anticipate their actions and provide subtle cues, they will follow naturally. This will keep the station safe and help the subjects learn without confusion. The team quickly set to work, implementing a system of subtle guidance. They adjusted lighting, repositioned objects, and used sounds and visual signals to create patterns that the subjects could notice and follow. It was a delicate balance. Too much intervention could cause panic or resistance, while too little would allow the subjects to wander and potentially disrupt critical areas. Aisha coordinated the central operations, monitoring the subjects' responses to the environmental cues. She observed how they adapted, how they learned from changes, and how they interacted with each other. Each small action gave the team more insight, allowing them to refine their approach. Throughout the morning, the team communicated silently through gestures, whispers, and short radio signals. Each member moved like part of a well-practiced dance, predicting the actions of the subjects and adjusting their strategy in real time. Marcus guided a subject toward a safe area, using visual cues and soft sounds, while Julian ensured that another subject remained within a controlled zone, preventing disruption in critical areas. Alina noticed that some subjects were particularly curious about specific equipment in the lab. Instead of preventing interaction, she guided them toward safe instruments where they could explore without risk. "Let them learn," she said softly. "Curiosity is natural. If we provide the right environment, they'll follow our lead without realizing it." The scientists watched closely, amazed at the team's methodical approach. "I've never seen anyone manage this so effectively," she said. "You're not controlling them, you're teaching them how to interact safely." By midday, the station was beginning to settle into a calm rhythm. The enhanced subjects were moving purposefully, exploring areas that had been prepared for them, and avoiding sections that could be dangerous. The team's careful planning and understanding what behavior had turned a chaotic situation into one of cooperation and learning. Marcus and Julian regrouped, with Alina and Aisha in the central lab to share observations and adjust their strategy. "They're adapting faster than I expected," Marcus said. "We need to make sure we stay ahead. But if we keep using guidance, they'll continue to follow the patterns." Aisha nodded. "When we can anticipate their next steps. By analyzing their responses, we can predict behavior and prepare the station for smooth operation." Julian added, "We also need to consider long-term adjustments. If the subjects continue to learn, the environment will need to adapt as well. This isn't a one-time fix, it's an ongoing process." Alina considered this and suggested that they establish a monitoring system to track movement, responses, and interactions. This would allow them to make real-time adjustments and ensure the station remained safe and functional. The team agreed, setting up sensors and observation points that blended seamlessly with the environment. As they worked, the team discovered that the enhanced subjects were not only curious but also cooperative when given the right direction. They seemed to respond to subtle encouragement, following patterns and interacting with instruments that had been prepared for them. It was a delicate balance between freedom and guidance, and the team's experience made it possible. Throughout the afternoon, the team continued their careful work, adjusting the environment, observing responses, and refining strategies. Each action was deliberate, designed to maintain safety while encouraging exploration. The station, once chaotic, began to feel orderly, efficient, and alive with quiet activity. The scientist expressed her gratitude, noting how the team's approach had prevented confusion, frustration, and potential disruption. "You've taken a situation that could have been overwhelming and made it manageable," she said. "It's remarkable to see how experience and understanding can guide learning without causing fear." Even as they managed the station, the team remained aware that the situation was still evolving. The enhanced subjects were learning, and the team needed to anticipate changes and adapt strategies. This required constant observation, communication, and coordination. The challenge they welcomed that Alina observed a subject experimenting with an interface designed for data collection. She guided it toward a safe area and watched as it adapted to the environment, learning from the patterns the team had created. "They're capable of understanding more than we realized," she said. "We just need to guide them carefully." Marcus monitored the West Wing, noting how subjects responded to the guidance system. Each adjustment, each subtle change, led to predictable behavior. He smiled, recognizing the effectiveness of their approach. "It's working," he said into his communicator. "They're following patterns without feeling restricted. This is exactly what we hoped for." Julian ensured that the northern storage areas remained secure, observing how the subjects explored new spaces. He noted that some of them were more cautious, while others were naturally curious. By providing structured paths and safe exploration zones, he was able to guide all subjects without causing stress or confusion. Aisha, overseeing the central lab, coordinated the team's efforts, analyzing responses, predicting outcomes, and suggesting adjustments. Her ability to anticipate behavior allowed the team to stay ahead of potential challenges, ensuring smooth operation throughout the station. By evening, the station had transformed from a place of uncertainty and chaos into a controlled environment where learning, exploration, and safety coexisted. The enhanced subjects were moving purposefully, interacting with instruments, and adapting to the patterns created by the team. The Vanguard members worked as one, their coordination seamless and their expertise evident in every action. The scientist, observing the changes, realized the full impact of the team's efforts. "You've done more than manage the situation," she said. "You've created an environment where learning and adaptation can happen safely. This is beyond anything I imagined." As night approached, the team gathered for a brief moment of reflection. They had turned a potentially overwhelming challenge into a manageable situation. Their careful planning, observation, and guidance had allowed the enhanced subjects to explore safely, learn naturally, and adapt effectively. The station was no longer a place of chaos, it was a space of order, understanding, and potential. Yet the team knew their mission was not finished. The enhanced subjects would continue to learn and adapt, and the station would require ongoing guidance to maintain stability. The Vanguard team had accomplished a critical step, but vigilance, adaptability, and coordination would remain essential in the hours ahead. Despite the long day and the challenges they had faced, there was a quiet sense of satisfaction among the team. They had arrived when help was needed, assessed the situation, and implemented strategies that ensured safety, learning, and order. Their efforts had prevented confusion, minimized disruption, and allowed the enhanced subjects to interact with the environment in a positive way. The night settled over the forest outside, calm and silent once more. Inside the station, the enhanced subjects rested in their designated areas, guided safely by the patterns and structures the team had created. The Vanguard members, though tired, remained alert, ready to respond to any changes that might occur. In that moment, the team understood the significance of their work. They were not only responding to a call for help, they were shaping an environment where the night passed quietly over the research station, the forest surrounding it dark and still. Inside, the enhanced subjects rested in their designated areas, having learned to follow the guidance patterns the Vanguard team had established. The station was calm for the first time since the distress signal had been sent. For the team, this was not just a moment of relief, it was an opportunity to reflect and plan the next steps carefully. Alina walked through the central lab, checking on the subjects and reviewing the data collected overnight. She watched as one subject interacted with a device designed for cognitive exercises, following the patterns laid out for them. The subject's movements were precise, deliberate, and calm, a clear sign that the guidance system had worked. Alina smiled softly. The chaotic situation of yesterday had been transformed into an environment where learning and exploration could happen safely. Aisha monitored the observations from multiple points, ensuring the subjects continued to behave predictably. "They're adapting faster than expected," she said into the communicator. "Our system is working, but we need to maintain consistency." Her tone was calm and professional, but there was an undercurrent of satisfaction. Their careful planning and coordination had produced results that were both effective and reassuring. Marcus was in the West Wing, conducting a final check of the instruments and equipment. He noted the condition of each device, ensuring everything remained functional and safe. "Everything looks stable," he reported. "The subjects are learning, the environment is secure, and our guidance is being followed. We've done what we came to do, but we need to keep observing." Julian, moving quietly through the North Wing, observed the subjects' interactions with the environment. He noted subtle improvements in behavior, increased confidence in movement, and a willingness to explore new areas without hesitation. "They're not just following patterns," he said. "They're understanding them. This is exactly what we hoped for." The scientist who had first contacted the team remained close by, observing with a mixture of relief and awe. She had spent years working with advanced cognitive projects, but she had never seen subjects adapt so quickly and calmly under guidance. "I can't thank you enough," she said to Alina and Aisha. "You've not only stabilized the station, but you've also created an environment where these subjects can learn safely and confidently." Alina nodded. "Our goal was always to guide, not control. They are intelligent and capable. They only needed direction, not restriction." The team gathered in the central lab to discuss the next phase. While the immediate crisis had been managed, the enhanced subjects would continue to adapt and grow. The challenge now was to ensure that their learning could continue safely and that the station remained secure. The team agreed to implement a long-term monitoring system, designed to track progress and adjust guidance as necessary. Aisha suggested creating a schedule of observation and interaction. "We can rotate tasks, monitoring different areas and subjects throughout the day. This way we can predict behavior, guide learning, and prevent confusion." Marcus added, "We should also maintain environmental patterns. They respond best to consistency. Any sudden change could cause uncertainty or disrupt the progress we've made." Julian emphasized the importance of communication. "We need to stay coordinated, sharing observations and adjustments in real. That's how we'll maintain stability and ensure the safety of everyone involved." With their plan in place, the team began implementing the long-term system. They set up sensors, observation points, and communication channels, creating a network that allowed them to monitor the subjects continuously without interfering with their natural learning process. Each adjustment was subtle, designed to guide rather than restrict, and the subject responded well, moving with confidence and purpose. As the day progressed, The team noticed improvements in behavior, learning speed, and adaptability. The subjects were no longer just following patterns, they were experimenting, exploring, and understanding the environment in ways that showed genuine intelligence. The team had created a balance between freedom and guidance, a space where growth could occur safely. Alina and Marcus walked through the main laboratory, observing how the subjects interacted with Ezra. "They're curious," Alina said. "They're exploring safely, but they're also learning." "That's exactly what we wanted." Marcus nodded. "And the environment we created supports that. We didn't control them, we guided them. They've adapted beautifully." Aisha joined them, reviewing the data collected over the past 24 hours. "Consistency was key," she said. "Our approach worked because we provided clear patterns, but allowed them to make choices within those patterns. That's how we achieve stability and learning at the same time." Julian arrived from the North Wing smiling slightly. Even their interactions with each other are improving. They're communicating, observing, and learning from one another. That's a clear sign they feel safe and understand the environment. The scientist watched them, her expression one of deep admiration. "I've never seen anything like this," she said. "Your approach could change the way we understand learning and adaptation in advanced cognitive research. You didn't just manage a situation, you created a model for the future." The team appreciated the compliment, but they remained focused on the present. There was still work to do, monitoring to maintain, and adjustments to make. They had achieved stability, but they knew that vigilance was essential, that subjects were capable of rapid learning, and the environment had to remain consistent to support their continued growth. As the day ended, the team gathered one last time to review progress. The station was calm, organized, and functioning efficiently. The enhanced subjects were engaged, moving purposefully, and learning within the patterns the team had established. The scientist was optimistic, confident that the environment would continue to support safe learning. Alina spoke first, her voice calm but filled with satisfaction. "We've accomplished a lot. The station is stable, the subjects are learning, and the systems we've implemented will ensure continued progress. Our work here is effective, but it's only the beginning of a longer process." Marcus added, "We've shown that with guidance, intelligence, and curiosity can thrive safely. That's the most important outcome. This could change how research stations operate in the future." Aisha nodded. "And it's proof that careful observation, coordination, and understanding can solve complex challenges without force or control. That's a lesson we can carry forward." Julian concluded, "Our mission was never just to respond. It was to guide, observe, and adapt. We've done that successfully. Now it's time to ensure that the station continues to function smoothly and safely." With the final review complete, the team took a moment to reflect on the journey. They had arrived in response to a distress signal, faced uncertainty, and transformed a potentially overwhelming situation into one of order, learning, and growth. Their skills, experience, and coordination had turned chaos into calm, confusion into understanding, and challenge into achievement. The scientist approached the team, expressing her gratitude once more. "You didn't just help us," she said. "You taught us how to manage, guide, and understand. Your approach has created something remarkable here. We couldn't have done this without you." Elena smiled, acknowledging the words. "We were called to help, and that's what we did. But the real success is in how the subjects have learned and adapted. That's their achievement, too," Marcus added, "and it's proof that the right guidance, careful planning, and teamwork can make the impossible manageable. That's what we bring to situations like this." Aisha and Julia nodded in agreement. The team had proven their ability not just to respond, but to guide, adapt, and create positive outcomes in complex, unpredictable situations. Their work at Research Station 9 would remain a model of careful observation, learning, and effective coordination. As evening fell, the team prepared to leave the station, confident that the systems they had implemented would continue to support safe learning and stability. The subjects were comfortable in their environment. The scientist was reassured, and the station had returned to a state of calm before departing. The team shared a quiet moment together, reflecting on the journey, the challenges, and the achievements. They had faced uncertainty, adapted to complex situations, and guided learning in a way that was both effective and humane. Their skills had made a difference, and their work would have lasting impact as they left the station, walking toward the forest edge where their transport waited. The team knew that their mission was complete, but the lessons they had learned would remain with them. They had been called for help, and they had answered. They had faced unpredictability, worked together, and turned challenge into opportunity. The forest around them was quiet, the night calm and still. The research station behind them glowed softly in the distance, a place of order, learning, and growth. The vanguard team had arrived when help was needed, guided the situation to stability, and ensured that intelligence, curiosity, and safety could coexist. And as they disappeared into the night, they carried with them the knowledge that when the world called for help, they were ready to answer together, with skill, understanding, and unwavering commitment.